welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. I'm your host, Pam Rader, and I have a really fun guest here for us all today. I've got Tyler Dudding with me today. He is a dating coach that helps high value women attract ideal partners. Now, I'm so stoked to have you here, Tyler, because I never had to swim in the dating pool for the past 20 years. And all of a sudden, this has become a reality for me. So I'm really curious to hear all the dirty details about the dating world today. So tell me a little bit about how you got into this line of work.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for having me, Pam. I'm excited to be here. And how I got into it was I struggled in relationships for most of my life. For like the first 25 years of my life, I was really challenged. Had a lot of struggles in relationships. Kept, trying to find a partner. Would find. I actually was pretty easy to find partners, but like maintaining healthy relationships and like building something that I loved that was really aligned to what I believed was up to the standards I had for my life was a real struggle. And then I started doing this work. I trained to become a coach. I joined a conscious relationship training. I joined Jay Shetty's coaching school. I started learning about personal development, all this kind of stuff, and realized that the common denominator was me in all of my relationships.
Weird,
And
right? Weird.
yeah, it turns out it wasn't everybody else. Like I think a lot of people think it is at first. I was like, hey, I think there's something that I'm contributing, and that's probably the only thing that I can change here. I can't change other people. So I started that journey, as many people do, the self-discovery. I like to call it like self-remembering a little bit.
What did
And
you discover in there? What was like the big, because there's all kinds of little nuggets, but there's usually one kind of friction point that we discover that's like a catalyst for big change.
yeah, great question. I had probably two main things. One was that the first two women that I fell in love with cheated on me, and I was really hurt by that. But I never really had the capacity to even hold space for my pain. So rather than like sit with my own pain, I went around and threw it at other people. And so like I was part of the problem.
Yeah, just like spew your dirty, unprocessed pain on everybody else.
Pretty much was
Yeah.
kind of what I did for a long period of time. And I kept thinking, well, why is it everybody else like this? And then I realized like, oh, actually, I think I'm doing something here. And I started to realize I was playing a role in it. And
So is that just like because it was unprocessed?
probably, yeah, I would say unprocessed, even just unaware of it, like and not like blissfully ignorant, but just ignorant that there was something that I was doing, like I just did it. You don't know what you don't know. And then I started learning about these things. And I think I'm a pretty open mind. And I was like, I think, oh, I do that. Oh, I have that. Oh, I could see the role that I'm playing here. And then I realized as I started like changing and shifting these things, positive things started happening in my life. So it kind of created this like virtuous cycle that really motivated me to keep going.
Right. So did that so you do this work on yourself, and then what made you decide that you wanted to help women, like high value women, attract healthy relationships into their lives?
Yeah. Two main reasons. One is I was raised predominantly by women. My dad, when I was young, worked pretty long hours. Like he probably wasn't home a lot.
Mhm.
And so I was raised predominantly by my mom, my grandma, very powerful women. And part of me just wanted to give back, like I am partly who I am because of the women that raised me. And so being able to kind of be of service to the women in my life is like feels really good. And I really enjoy it. And I find with the women that I work with, because I'm a man, I can hold a space for them that is very healing. Because maybe some of them haven't experienced a man who can kind of let them feel their feelings or let them work through what they're working through and just allow them that space. And
Mhm.
so I, in some way, selfishly get something out of that because I also really enjoy it, but I find it also deeply healing for them too.
Beautiful. I love that. So I was just chatting with another guest this morning, and we're talking about how the greatest work in the world usually comes from our desire to contribute, like to give back. And when we have that as the sort of starting point, even at the places where it feels sticky or we're not sure of ourselves, we'll keep going because we want to help other people. And those are my kind of people. I love hanging out with people like you. That's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Me
So
too.
you did your coaching courses and all of that stuff. You decided on this sort of niche. Tell me a little bit about this journey. Like how do you guide women to like where are they coming to you from? I'll tell you a little something. When I first got out of my marriage, everyone's like, you're gonna hate the day. It's awful out there. And like this was the story. Now I've been doing my work for such a long time. I was like, I don't subscribe
Yeah.
to that story. Like I won't, but
Yeah.
that is the story out there,
Yeah. Yeah. There
that
is
it's
a
just
huge,
awful.
yeah. Yeah. There's a huge societal conditioning right now. And the reality is at times, sure, it can be challenging as everything in life can be. But I think the mindset we have towards it really, as I'm sure you're aware, influences it big time. Cause I meet many people who say like, oh, I hate it and it's the men's fault and all these things. And then nothing ever changes. And then I have these clients who decide to change their mindset, trying to change their energetics, change the action that they're taking. And then suddenly they have partners and partners that they love and could never have imagined having before. So I really think it's a matter of like how you choose to perceive something as you spoke to yourself.
Well, isn't everything? that
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
how we choose to perceive it. Like it's either happening to you or, so, what's the old expression? Life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. That's not even true. It's
yeah,
happening because of you.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that. It's happening through you. You are actually the creator of
Yeah,
life.
you're the creator. However what your beliefs are, what your perceptions are. So when people are getting into the dating world, I mean, oftentimes I would imagine that there's a lot of unprocessed hurt,
Yeah,
dirty pain as we called it. And you probably get a lot of people doing the dance around each other with all this unprocessed stuff.
yeah.
How does one navigate that?
It's a good question. And it's obviously depending on what you have been through and where you come from, everybody has their own flavor or their own unique flavor of pain or experience that they've been through that somehow shows up in their reality right now. And I think first one is like taking responsibility that we somehow contribute to it. You know, if we don't ever take it's like, when you're pointing the finger and they say like, oh, it's the blame finger, but it's also like the power finger. Whoever you point the finger at now has power. So unless you're pointing it at yourself, the other person has power over you. So I think
100%, right? The abdication of responsibility is the greatest cause of suffering.
yeah, it is. Exactly. I found when people take on that responsibility, they realize like, oh, I can change it. Oh, if I change what I think, I can change my reality. If I change the energy I show up with, I can, oh, and if I change my action, and then they start to realize like little by little that, oh, I get to influence the reality that I live in. I get to decide what happens. And then they become like unstoppable is kind of what I've experienced. Once you get a little bit of that momentum, everything changes.
Beautiful. So what are some of the biggest complaints and stuck points for women that would come to you? They say I've been on the dating apps for a while and nothing's happening, or meeting the wrong kind of men. Like what
Yeah.
leads someone to want to work with somebody like you?
Yeah, of course. Probably the common one is like dating app burnout, just like exhausted by being on the apps, having men who just, want one thing from them is like a super common one. Trying to sleep with them, like without even trying to have conversations with them, is probably like one of the biggest frustrations I hear. Or even out in person, being like, I'm going out, I'm doing all the things, but no one's approaching me. And that's actually almost like not being phased out because it's like old school dating, but people are trying to do that and it's not even working for them now. And they're finding like maybe I'm too intimidating or I'm not being approached and nothing is working. So they're trying both methods and realizing like, oh, at least the way in which they're approaching it isn't creating the result that they're looking for.
So now you work with like high value, sometimes high achieving women. Are they intimidating to men?
Not to the right ones.
Yeah.
I find to the wrong ones, sure. And sometimes that's the thing. Like if you think about the man that you want to be with, is he spending hours on a dating app with his time? Probably not. He's probably out living his life. He's probably out making a difference, probably out making an impact. And you're probably far more likely to meet the right kinds of men out there in the world. Sure, dating apps can be helpful as like a little supplement, but I find most people just rely solely on the apps, right? And like that's maybe one of their core strategies with nothing else. And it doesn't seem to work.
Right. What are some other strategies that we can use?
Yeah, perfect. Probably two most common ones. One is what it called like a place to be able to go and meet and attract people. And so through that is like going to the right place. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to go to like a yoga class. They'll come, oh, I'm just going to do things I love, which is great. But if you just go to say a yoga class, you're unlikely. Obviously, it's predominantly, at least yoga class I've been to, are predominantly more women, and there's not much of a place to interact or connect with other people. So there's kind of two approaches that I like to go with. One is going to places where men will be, and so there are certain things you can do. ChatGPT is actually really good for this. But researching wherever it is that you live, being able to find out well, where are the kinds of men that I'm looking for specifically, where do they spend their time, what kind of clubs are they in, and if it's something that you would be interested in, going and spending time in those places will just statistically raise the chances of you meeting the right kind of guy. And then the second one is doing activity group-based activities that create interaction. So rather than just something like a yoga class where you don't really interact with people, something where maybe it's like a
We do
fitness.
at my studio. It's crazy. They talk.
Yeah, okay, they're doing the yoga. See, the
Yes,
ones
you
I've
can
been to are
send people
completely
to my
silent.
studio, Tyler. It's good. They come in,
Okay.
there's no silence. I introduce everyone. They all know each other. It's
Oh,
great.
perfect. Okay, well, Pam's yoga is okay. The yoga I've been to, I wasn't allowed to speak, but so
Yeah,
Pam yoga is
no.
good. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Interactive group-based activities, because I find a lot of people might be uncomfortable trying to make the first move. Even men these days, like there's a lot of, I also run men's groups and I'm a part of men's group, have a fear around like, all the movements that have been happening. They're very actually afraid of like making
Let's
somebody
talk
uncomfortable.
about that, Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel sorry for men. I have 4 sons, all
Yeah.
grown men.
Yeah.
And I know that there has been in the past like learned toxic masculinity and blah, blah, blah. But I think that now what I see
Yeah.
far and above anything is men can't make a right move to save their lives. It seems like they can't say anything right. We have no grace for, you learning and trying to do something better than you were modeled. And I think that as women, that's where it's not about not calling out bad behavior, but it's also like could we work together to create the behaviors that we want and give some grace, because we're just human beings. What do you see around that? Like you said, you're in a men's group. Is that a common thing that men are just afraid to say anything nowadays?
There's definitely a bigger fear probably than there's ever been, at least in my lifetime. People want like the old school way of dating, but then, like you say, if a man does one thing wrong or makes a mistake, even if it's a genuine one, like, in the world we live in, that can be very much held against them. And so I find men are a lot more afraid to maybe take the action. People obviously are building up and doing the things, but you'd be surprised that, like, even something as simple like from a woman of a smile, something that is in, like, I always like to think of inviting. A lot of women are trying to avoid being the masculine one and approaching. And I think we get so wrapped up in those terms that we just stop being authentic, right? We're like, oh, well, I'm trying to be feminine. And then actually you're just being inauthentic in some ways and forcing something. Whereas, like, maybe politely offering a smile, if that feels genuine and true to you, is something that's very inviting to a man. And so there's like, to me, a true feminine woman is very inviting. So it kind of goes a little bit against what everybody's talking about nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I always say, you can point a finger at someone and that's not very inviting, but if you do this, you're going to get a
Mm,
whole lot
there you go.
more, Yeah. Yeah, wow. Well, women are struggling to meet people. Men are struggling to meet the right partners. What's the big misalignment there? Do you think it's a societal thing? Do you think it's an internet thing? Do you think it's an attention deficit thing? Like, do you have any theories on why it's something that seems? I look back at high school, I'm like, it was easy to meet people.
Yeah.
What do you think is that the cause?
Yeah. One of the theories I've come with so far is like almost like the grass is greener on the other side theory, right? Like before, when we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all these dating apps, we couldn't just go and scroll and swipe on 1,000 people in an hour. We were more present, more enjoying what was in front of us. And now there's like this inflated sense of what we can have, right? Like, I can have anything, I can have everything, but then we actually end up having nothing, because we're always comparing it to this like false ideal
Yeah.
rather than the true depth of a real relationship that will have its challenges, that will maybe confront you, that will maybe be a mirror. And actually, it's easier to avoid that and instead think that I could have anything that I want.
It's kind of like when credit cards first came out, and I think people went crazy with them. You just I can have whatever I want, and then they wind up in this massive debt and wonder what. I think every kid does that when they get their first credit card. I can buy whatever I want, and then they're like, "Oh no." Or going to a restaurant and the menu's too big. I hate that. I can
Mhm.
never decide what I want, and I always think
Yeah,
I'm picking the wrong thing.
yeah, exactly. Right. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually something that you've probably come across in coaching, but that when we have more than three things to choose from, the
Hmm.
brain will often go into paralysis because it can't perceive that there's a right decision. And if we only have two things, we'll also go into paralysis because there's
Yeah,
a right and a wrong. But three
yeah,
is kind of the right number for us
yeah.
to be like, yeah, well, there's no right or wrong here, but there is a choice to be made. So it's interesting how the brain works.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when you combine that, right, with like now we have millions of options and everybody's always looking for the one, right? There's like one-itis, as my mentor Phil calls it. And it's the idea that, well, there's this one person out there that I'm meant to be with. And so unless it's that one person, to me is like a trap that we can hide behind for a really long time without actually just, the right one is the one in front of you, right? At least for whatever the
The
lesson
right
might
one
be
is the
right
one
now.
that's willing to work on
Yeah,
becoming the best version of themselves with you. That's what I think.
yeah, yeah. That's a key.
And I think that if you have two willing people who are somewhat aligned in their values,
Yeah,
if you do some work, you can make it work. And this idea of, a lot of people don't realize the chemistry that happens when you first get together, right? It's all the dopamine and then oxytocin and all of that. But at about 6 months, no matter who you are, that's going to shift a little bit from that initial chemistry to the sort of the companion love that's different, that requires us to then actually have some real conversations and sort some shit out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I went through a training called the Conscious Relationship Council, and so this is their idea. But they talked about first, that little phase is called the honeymoon, as
Mhm.
everybody knows. We love the honeymoon, and then you go into what they call the power struggle, which is like, oh, actually, we're real humans. We have flaws, and one of two things happen: you either like elevate into a conscious relationship, and you can last for as long as you want, or you just leave and then go back to the start for the honeymoon. And most people just end up in this phase of like honeymoon, power struggle, but never go beyond it.
Whoa. Do you think people are addicted to the honeymoon phase?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been reading Joe Dispenza's books at the minute, and he's talking a lot about how we have like an actual addiction to our emotions. So whatever
Mhm.
we're familiar with is actually neurochemically in our body. We are now addicted to it, and so we'll recreate the same experiences. This was me when I was dating initially, like a roller coaster ride. Like I'm going up, and then I'm going down, and there's like something about that that very much reminded me of my childhood and was like very exciting. But also now, I like my whole life is just optimized for peace, and that's what I see with my clients. And peace can also feel boring. Like, well, I don't know, and it obviously there's a difference, and you learn to discern between peace and boring, but we're not used to actually experiencing peace really in any area of our lives normally. So it's a different way.
Yeah, the nervous system is wired for familiarity because it wants to just keep the meat suit alive. And it says this is how we stayed alive. But the conscious mind can know that it's not healthy, but the subconscious rules the body. And that's all in the subconscious, right? So, probably getting into the dating world, it might be a good idea for people to look at their subconscious beliefs, to look at their upbringing. Where was their chaos? What are the strategies that I had to learn to survive? And are any of those anything that I want to bring forward with me into a relationship? But we tend to other everything, right? Like when I get that other person, it's like I
Yeah.
call it the land of later on. You know, when you lose 5 pounds, when you
Yeah.
make more money, when you whatever,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
life will be better. When I meet that partner, my life will be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's
Yeah.
like how do I be better
Mm,
from this experience?
yeah.
And who will that attract? Because I think it's all frequency. Do you think it's vibration and frequency?
Yes. And I think there, at least what I teach, there are three parts is like subconscious, somatic, and strategy. And so, like, I believe it's an alignment of all three. But ultimately, at the end of the day, your energy, I find, will be the one that resonates the longest and be the one that people will feel your energy far more than they ever hear your words. So you can walk into a room and somebody's like, you can feel that person. It's the one that stands out the most. So, like, sure, you could say a lot of things, but whatever your state or your somatic kind of energy, your nervous system, whatever it is, people will feel that, even if they're not even aware that they're feeling it. They'll experience it and be like, I don't know if I like this person. And they might not know why, but it's a feeling. So I would agree. Yeah.
I always say people don't hear what you're saying, they hear who you're being.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's so true.
Yeah. So tell me about these three parts. So you said subconscious, somatic, and what was the third one?
Strategy.
Strategy. So break
Yeah.
that down for me.
Yeah, so subconscious is working with the mind, as you described there. Is like, what do I believe, and is what I believe serve me? We do a workshop with my clients where they look at maybe all of the beliefs they've had in their life, and it's crazy to see what they're believing. Like one might be like, I don't deserve love, I'm never going to find the man, but then they have a conscious goal of like, I'm going to find my life partner, and obviously there is an incongruence between both. And so unless we change what they're believing subconsciously, they'll just never have the thing that they want
Right.
because they're working against 95% the subconscious being 95%, the conscious mind 5% against the beneath of the iceberg, and they never really get anywhere, even though they're like, hey, I keep trying. Why is it not happening? That's commonly a pretty obvious reason why.
So there's friction between the subconscious and the desire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And the subconscious always wins out. There's a book, it's called like The Elephant Rider. It's like, imagine you're riding an elephant. And if you like told the elephant to go left, but it decided it wanted to go right, the elephant's going to go where the elephant wants to go. Kind of like the
Right.
subconscious mind.
Yeah, I did a lot of work with Bob Proctor's
Yes. Yeah.
group, and that's yeah, we talked a lot about the power of the subconscious and the paradigms that we create, and we those paradigms will live out unless we confront
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so then let me just say to our listeners, like, you can't just do that work alone. You actually need a coach. You need someone to guide you through it, because if you could see what your paradigm was, you would already have what you want. You can't even see it. So you need someone else to help point that out.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite things Joe Dispenza says is your personality creates your personal reality. Whoever you are right now created the reality that you live in. So if you don't like your reality, you created it. And so
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
people don't like that. They're like, oh, something's right. It's like, no, you did this. But also it means you could change it, which is the good side of it.
Yeah. But it starts with not changing the external circumstances. It starts with changing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So then what's the somatic?
Cool. So somatic is kind of made up of two things. I see this very much as like the feeling and the energetics. So this is a lot of people I work with have built an emotional armor around themselves, which is also what got them to where they are. It's why they crush their careers. It's why they're so good at everything they do, because they probably shut down that part of them very young in their lives. Like almost every woman that I work with has experienced something like that. And so learning to soften, and again, it doesn't mean a lot of people can resist this because they think like, oh, well, then I'm not going to be able to do what I do in my career. It's not like a removing, it's like almost an expanding in some ways of like who you really are, even though you're kind of just returning to your normal self. But yeah, so it's like feeling the feelings is part of it, energetically becoming aligned with the thing that you want. And also the thoughts lead into this. What you think creates also what you feel. So if you want to shift your feelings, shifting your thoughts, everything kind of contributes to each other, but that's predominantly the somatic side of things.
Talk about that in terms of like the feminine energy and that, because I've been really I was in my masculine kind of energy for a long time as survival. I had like
Yeah.
an abusive marriage and
Yeah.
all kinds of things back in the day, and it works to a certain degree. You get stuff done and you get results. But what it got me was achievement, but not the connection. And then also there were times when I like needed help, or and I didn't even know how to ask for it. And then I would resent the men around me for not recognizing it. So I had to really learn how to there is a way, I believe, to learn to soften.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with being strong or weak. It's just like an opening and a softening that you allow. And I think there's more of an inner strength to that than anything.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
hear all these women say, well, I'm in my feminine energy now. And it's like, I don't know that we completely understand what it is. I sort of think of it as more goddess energy, really. Like it's very powerful. And it's like, I'm allowing you to see this part of me,
Yeah, yeah. It
not like
reminds me, I
I'm
had a teacher,
weak.
yeah. I had a teacher, who talks a lot about Kali, the goddess. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she's
Oh
like the
yeah, I've written
all-powerful.
about Kali in my book. Yeah.
Okay, cool. There you go. And so, like, she is like the true embodiment. She has both sides. So you can be, like this, but then she also like she'll do what she wants. And so I think like that is the full embodiment. Feminine doesn't mean to be passive. It doesn't mean to like roll over. I don't personally think that that is feminine. You may want to be led, but that's much different than being passive.
I love that case. Say more about this, wanting to be led, because I'll just share. I don't share too much about like the breakdown of my marriage because it's my ex-husband's story to tell, and we're friends, and he's a kind, lovely man. But I asked him to lead in our marriage so many times, and at the end, he said, "I just didn't know how." I just didn't know how. Why do women crave leadership in a relationship?
Yeah, good question. It's one of my clients gave a perfect example of this. She was like, the analogy she used is like, imagine you're on a cruise ship. She's like, I've been the cruise director my whole life, and I want to just be on the cruise. She's like, I want to enjoy the cruise. I want to sunbathe. I want to have a nice time. And she's like, sure, I can go up and drive the boat if I need to, but I don't want to have to. And so my experience, even my partner now, when I first met her, she ran her own business and sold it. She's like, was a single mom. She's like taking care of everything. And then also my experience now as I step up and lead is she's really learning to soften and allowing herself to soften and allowing me in, which is, it feels like an honor to be a part of it. And so my like firsthand experience, both with my partner and with my clients, is that women are tired. They're like exhausted of having to carry so much around and like play
Thank you for
vocal.
saying that. That was
Yeah.
exactly it. That's such a beautiful metaphor that you use. I'm like, I can do it. I can drive the ship. I can do all this stuff. And I'm like, I've been doing it since I was 14 years old, and I would like to sit down and let
Yeah.
somebody else
Yeah.
just drive for a minute, you know? Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, if you're helping these women, who's out there helping men learn how to lead? And where do men come to learn how to lead?
My number one recommendation is men's groups. Personally, the best way that men learn, from my experience and being man myself, is from the role model of other men. So obviously getting feedback and things like this, but sitting in a group, I've sat in a men's group now for coming on 4 years. And the guy that joined that group compared to the man I am now, I was a boy when I joined, and today I'm a man. And surrounding yourself with men who care, who live inspirational lives. Personally, I'm a part of something called the Arca Brotherhood. I can only recommend what I've been through, but it is the
I
most
have a
life
couple
changing
friends
thing.
that are members of that. I think you know them.
Yeah, probably do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that one is like just for men specifically. There's something about being in circle with men. I told you I was raised by women predominantly, and they did the best they could to raise me as a young man, but also to actually become a man. It helps to learn from men. And so, like you
You
said,
have to have models.
yeah, yeah. And most men don't know how to lead because they were never taught. It's not like they don't want to. Every man, I believe, really wants to. They say something like male depression is treated the same as female depression, when actually it should be treated considerably different. Like a man wants to feel powerful and strong, and that is will actually inspire him to do the things that he wants. And that's been my experience too.
Wow. So if a man is struggling to lead his relationship, it's time for
Yeah,
him to get some help.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
At the very least, some somewhat enlightened male friends, but best case scenario, some kind of men's group.
Yeah.
Do you guys call each other out on all your stuff in these groups?
Yeah, 100%. There's like few key philosophies in the group, but one of the core ones is to create a safe space so that men can share the things. We live in a society where if a man, everybody wants a man to be vulnerable, and then the second he is, they put him down about it. This is again, it's a pretty common theme, so it like contradicts itself. But in the space, we create a safe space. A man then is committed to sharing his truth, and then the rest of the men are committed to reflecting it back. And so there is like a lot of fire, there's a lot of love, there's probably some tears. There's a whole range of things that might happen in one of our groups. We do retreats, but yeah, being met and being called forward. Like when I see the men in my group, sometimes I don't even see the man in front of me. I see the man that I know he can be, or the man he's told me he wants to be. And so now my role is to hold him to that, as uncomfortable as that might be for all of us sometimes.
I've always said be around people that call you up, not call you
Mhm.
out. Anybody can call you out. Be around people that call you up.
Yeah.
They say you're being a 4 out of 10 right now, Tyler. I believe you're a 10 and I'm calling you up. Do
Yeah.
better, and I love that. But I think men are taught at a young age to call each other out.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets that we're not so vulnerable, or, you're not so vulnerable. But when you're around men that will call you up, that you're inspired by, that you admire, I think that's so beautiful. And I'm so happy to hear that there are so many more men's circles and groups and things
Yeah.
going on, because the modeling for how to be a man was lacking.
Yeah, big time, big time. It's and again, everybody's doing the best they can, and we
Yeah.
need to learn new tools, new skills, and it's like very clear. You can see it in the world we live in nowadays, and so like things need to change. And I think men's groups are definitely rapidly picking up. I actually had a call with someone in England the other day who was like, "Oh, I want to learn about men's groups. I'm aware Vancouver does a really good job with them. Can you tell me more about it?" Which excited me because I'm originally born in England, so I was like, "Oh, it's catching. Let's go. This is good." I mean, because if you help the men, you help the whole world, right?
Yeah. I mean, if men can lead well, then women can soften. And if women soften, they're in their creativity, they're in their full expression, and that brings beauty to the world. Like, I just think it's so win.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's nothing more inspiring than a woman like just in flow. But my most inspiring thing is my partner, right? She'll come down, she'll have something to say, she'll like just disrupt the day in the most beautiful way, and it's like, what a boring world it would be without women. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we have the subconscious, the somatic, and then strategy. So talk to me a little bit about strategy.
Cool. Yeah. And strategy, one of the most important because a lot of people have this like, the myth of like, oh, I'm just waiting for the right person to come along or, like God's going to send him to me. There's a lot of these people I talk to and then I hear those people again 1 or 2 or 3 years later and nothing's changed. And I think, yes, there is a divine timing and it also requires something of us. Like people wouldn't bring this, if you look at their lives, especially high value women, they're like intentional in every area, but then sometimes they might be like, oh, but I'm waiting for my dating. And it kind of doesn't, in my head, really add up. So I think having some kind of strategy to change that, to shift that, because again, what we do creates a ripple effect that comes back to us. So, in terms of the strategy, there's kind of like four main parts. I call it the love method. So, locate, which is like figuring out the places to go, kind of briefly what we spoke about earlier. There's a little bit more to it, but finding ways to locate aligned men, not just men, because I think people are tired of just attracting men. Like, they don't want that. They want a man
That's
who's,
pretty easy, actually. But yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
aligned, who knows?
Yeah, aligned, the kind of men they're looking for. Organizing, so then like having a filtering system in some ways of like what are the kind of men that you would like to be with, and being able to filter them quite effectively and quickly, so you don't waste time. That's probably the biggest. The women I work with have like not a lot of time spare, so they don't want to waste it. So being able to filter effectively and efficiently is super helpful. Verify. So this is like verifying whether they're the kind of men they are, and how to do that again effectively and efficiently. So again, you're not wasting time. And then E, which is evaluate. So this is like the long-term evaluation. How can you make sure that 6 months, 1 year, 5 years down the road, you don't find something that you wish you had have known already and that actually wouldn't work out?
So
So
how
really
do
having a
people
bit of
go about evaluating? Is it just from your experience as you go, just being awake and aware of the things you want?
yeah. So I think being intentional about it. A lot of people don't really have a system. They're just like, oh, I think this feels right, or this is like that. And I think I found the two kind of pronged approach, which is one is like very mental. It's like, cool, what are the things that I know I would need? People call these requirements or non-negotiables are two words commonly thrown around. Like say, if you know the kind of life you want to live and you're very clear on certain things, maybe you want to have children. It's a very obvious example. And you meet someone who does want to have children, who's like, oh, maybe one day I'll change my mind. You kind of already know enough that that's not the person who's going to be able to create the life that you would like to have. They don't have a shared vision or they don't have shared values. If you value hiking, a good one I see is like people value adventure. And one person's adventure means like traveling the world for a month at a time. And the other one means like going to the park on the weekend. So you got to have like also balanced values. There's a difference between the depth of them. So that's like more of the practical side. And then the other side, which also comes back to the energetics, is like, how do I feel when I'm with this person? Do I feel safe? Do I feel joy? Do I feel peace? And this also requires you to be able to get in touch with your feelings and your state and be able to embody things to even know the answer to that. Most people don't because they're not in touch with that part of themselves. So having that
Yeah,
like
there's an
balanced approach.
energy that has to be right. And yeah, how you feel matters. And I think that our cells are so full of wisdom. So I want to just ask you about this. Like, I have a lot of people because I'm a coach. And so people are often talking to me about these things as well. And I have so many people make the mistake of going, like, well, I want them to have basically, they want them to have the same interests as them. And I'm like,
Mm,
that doesn't fucking matter. Like, what matters is aligned values. And in fact, I think it's my perception anyway that when you have different interests, it's great because you get to come to the relationship full.
yeah.
Your life is full and you have interest, and now you have interesting things to talk about and learn about from each other. But that there has to be just a core alignment of values. What do you say about that?
The best way it was ever described to me is like, imagine it's like a Venn diagram. So there's like some little overlap in the middle, but then we each have our own kind of like separate lives too. So like for me, I love hiking, and in the future that I see for my family is we're all hiking together. So that would require my partner to enjoy hiking, right?
Mhm.
So like that's where the interest could be a requirement or something that they must have. But then also like I love surfing, and my partner, I have taught her to surf and she loves it. But even if she hated surfing, I would be okay with it because surfing is something I love by myself. So I think it's learning to differentiate what is like a non-negotiable interest and what is open. Because also, like you said, if we all were just interested in the same thing, it would be boring. We would miss out on a whole nother lifetime. She's interested in so many things that I have no idea about. And so I get to learn these like fascinating things. And so I think it's finding a balance of both.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I love that you said that. Like, there has to be some kind of overlap in the middle of some commonality, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And even from values too, because if like somebody values like work and somebody values play, but they're completely opposite, you might just never be able to create a life that you want. And if you imagine, one of the questions I ask my clients is like, could you imagine raising a child with this person? Could you imagine that your child would become exactly like this person? And people are like, oh, that's a very confronting question because, you know, our children become like us. And so like that will give you a good lens of, is this person creating the life that I want?
You know, my one of my sons, my boys are all grown, as I said, and my son is now the oldest one. He's married for a year and a half now to the love of his life. She's a beautiful girl. But prior to that, he was in a relationship with a woman who was they were struggling, and she seemed a little controlling and very insecure, and had and he did not want to make a mistake. And he came to me and said, like, what do I do? And I'm not going to give advice to my kids on their relationships. So I asked him a question. I said, if she became the mother of your child and it didn't work out, how do you feel about that? And he's like, fuck no. Okay, got my answer.
There
That's
you
like
go.
such a great, like,
Yeah.
project that into the future.
Yeah.
And I think you can get really clear.
Yeah, play the full movie is what I tell my clients. Like, you
Play
know,
the
play this
full
full
movie.
movie. See what happens. What's the ending of this movie? Because people love the beginning. Oh, wait, it's this, and it's like, yeah, well, play the full movie now. Gets a little bit boring in the middle? What's the ending like? And people are like, oh, no, no, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to share, I haven't shared this publicly yet, but I'm going to share this little experience. So I went on the dating apps shortly after me, a couple months after my husband left. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to just like try. And I was writing down, like, what do I want in a person? And I thought, I'm not really going to know unless there's like energy. I have to be in proximity to a person. And I think there's something to that because anybody can say anything on a text or whatever. I have to be in proximity. So I went out on a few like coffee dates, a glass of wine here and there. And I was like, oh my God. Oh no. Like, they should just call this what's left. Like, I was like, hi. And all these men were they were kind and nice, and they all wanted to see me again. And it was like, and I had just this resistance, and there was what I
Mm,
felt was no alignment. So I came home, and instead of thinking about it in terms of the men, I was like, I have an opportunity here. What were the parts of me that I did not like in my last relationship? I was married for 19 years. What are the parts of me that I want to leave behind? And who do I want to become? And who's the man that can hold that?
mm, yeah.
And so I made a list of like where I could be a little dominating and controlling, and where I could run over a little bit if I want to, because I'm pretty smart, so I could do that. And I was like, I don't want to do those things anymore. And so for me to be able to be fully who I want to be and evolve into that version of myself, what kind of energy would I have to call in? And so I wrote all of that down, and then I thought, okay, now I feel very clear. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to like delete those other apps. And I just tried one different app and I put a very different profile with this energy. Within 5 minutes, I met a great man.
Yeah.
And it was, and I know that it has nothing to do with the app. It was completely the me getting clear on,
Yeah.
if I'm looking out there for
Yeah.
what they have to be,
Yeah.
I'm missing a big part of the work of what it is to have a healthy relationship,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I'm curious, what do you think allowed you? Because a lot of my listeners listening to this would also be like, how did you get there? They might get a little stuck in that phase of you being able to self-reflect in that way. Like, what allowed you to make that shift?
The self reflection.
Yeah. And realizing like, oh, maybe, what am I doing in my past? Like, what allowed you to even be able to
Well,
think
so
that
I'm
way?
a big responsibility person. I think that anytime I'm dissatisfied in my life, that's again, it's my perception. It's often something that I'm doing or not seeing. And so I tend to, when I feel friction in my life, I look at it as no thorns, no roses. The friction is causing me to have to look at myself. Now, most people, when they feel friction, they immediately try to get out of discomfort and
Hmm.
they look outside of themselves for the cause of the discomfort and they want to cut that off.
Yeah.
But I have had enough gifts of challenges in my life to know that each one comes with a great blessing. And if I ask the right question, like, what am I a yes for? Who do I want to be? And then what do I have to let go of to get there? Then things start to align for me. So for me, it's really like years and years of self reflection. But I got caught up in the like, oh, well, I'll just go out there and do that. And when there was friction, I was like, okay, what is it? I could sit there and buy into the story that this dating stuff is awful. Or I could go, no, the me I am now is attracting this
Mm.
caliber of man. But the woman that I'm becoming is attracting
Yeah.
a different caliber of man, someone who has the capacity to be fully present
Yeah.
and
That's beautiful.
unflinching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's I imagine it's gonna inspire a lot of people. Again, not a lot of people look at it through that lens. So, and you can see the immediate impact that it had.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was instant. And I was just like, wow, okay. So, I mean, this is still a new thing, but energetically, I was just like, oh, wow, what a difference when I changed my energy, what I called in.
Yeah.
And so I think that's such an important part. And I mean, who knows? I'm delusional, but so far so good.
Delusional optimism is the way. That's how everybody I think is a little bit delusional. So I'm a delusional optimist.
Yeah, I love that. If you're going to be delusional, at least be a delusional optimist.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, what advice would you give to someone who's been out there for a long time trying to do this thing? They really do want to attract a partner
Yeah.
and they're just over it. I hear this from so many
Yeah.
men and women. They're just over it. What would you
Yeah.
say to them?
Yeah. Stop trying harder. That's what a lot of people are doing. They just keep like pushing against the wall, and like you say, the resistance, they just almost create more resistance of it. There are probably a few different things you do. One could be like a little reset,
Mhm.
like taking some time away and just like what you did, right? Taking time to pause. What is it that I'm thinking? What is it that I'm feeling? And how am I acting? And how can I shift those things? To me, it's about like working smarter, not harder. If you're not sure what those things are, obviously you can do some research. You can get some kind of coach, somebody to support you, find somebody who's done the thing that you want to do. That's what I do. I don't really take advice from anybody who's not where I want to be in my life.
Right?
So, and I don't take criticism from anyone who's not where I want to be too. That's kind of something I've lived by for a long time. So maybe finding somebody who has the thing that you want and maybe learning from them. To me, is how you accelerate anything. I have to do that in all areas. Yeah. But yeah, I really think shifting the way you think, shifting the way you feel, and shifting the way you act. And like you spoke earlier, sometimes that's really hard to do by yourself because you don't know what it is that you're doing that's not aligned. Because to me, it's not a matter of trying, it's a matter of aligning. And so something is misaligned if you're not creating what you want, just like what you did, right? You came out, you changed what you thought, you changed the way you feel and how you felt. And then you actually took a completely different strategy, removed all the other apps, and then you created a new reality, which to me is just the byproduct of those three things. But we get so obsessed with the outcome when actually the outcome is just a byproduct and we can do nothing about it directly, but indirectly through the other three things.
How much do you think it's important? Like, one of the things that I decided was I'm going to be completely authentically myself, like, no holding anything back. Like, that whoever this person is coming in's got to be big enough to hold all of that. And
Yeah.
it's a lot. And I was like, and I'm calling it all in. Everything's possible.
Mm,
And I see so many of my clients still holding back some things and saying like, well, but if he saw this part of me, or if I don't feel comfortable sharing that or whatever. And how much of a how important is it for people to just go in being completely authentic?
mm, yeah. Probably the most important thing. You can't say the wrong thing to the right person is something I really
Oh, I
believe.
love that. That just like made my heart flutter a little bit. That's so good. You can't say the wrong thing to the right person.
Yeah, it's impossible. There's the Course in Miracles, right? It says like nothing real can be threatened is like one of the first lines, and it's like if this is meant to be, again, not that it will just it will magically be, but at the same time, it will require something of you, and that might require you. Somebody can't fall in love with you unless they get to see you, and so people, well, they don't like me. No, they don't like the fake version of you that you're presenting. Actually, is what they maybe don't like. But actually, if you were really you, more people would like that. And like on the dating apps and dating, I'm like, hey, don't go for the 100%. Go for the 0.001%, because you probably don't even want the 99% anyway, based
Mhm.
off the kind of, especially the women that I work with. Like they don't just want any man, they want a specific kind of man. And so it's like, cool, we'll say the things that are true so that that man can see you amidst the crowd. Say what is true, speak your desires, and like that will attract the man, rather than like a generic profile or just boring questions, things like that. It's like, be real, be who you are, do something a little bit bold. And it doesn't mean you have to be the most bold tomorrow, but like take little steps to be a little bit bolder, and magic will unfold.
That's amazing. I just love all of those things that you said. Like that, I think that's such a good reminder because we live in a world where everyone's trying to be something that they're not to belong. And we're conditioned that that's okay. Not only are we conditioned that it's okay, we're conditioned that we should be trying to be something other than we are to fit in. And I think that what is missing, getting back to a little earlier in our conversation with what is the problem with dating now? And I think it's this sort of fear of being our authentic selves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Whoa.
people crave depth, right? That's what they want. Everybody wants it, and everybody's hiding from it. It's like two
Yeah.
sided.
I
People
put
crave
it
depth.
right on my profiles. Like, if you don't want to swim in the deep end, like, I'm not your person.
Yeah, which is
Like,
good because you will turn off anyone who's not your person, right? And
totally.
it's like the best filtering mechanism is authenticity. Actually, is what I would probably say.
Yeah. Whoa. That's so great. So, where can people find you, Tyler?
So yeah, on Instagram at Tyler Dudding, that's where it is. If you're on there, you can send me a message, ask me any questions. If you have anything after this that you heard that you liked, or you wanted to talk about, I love talking with people on Instagram and answering any questions.
Amazing. And you've got your tylerdudding.com, your website. People they can hire you to work with you, like one on one. Do group coaching. What do you do?
Yeah. So right now, I'm just doing one-to-one coaching. I personally love getting to work one-to-one with people and kind of the intimate side of the coaching there. And over time, I'm going to create a couple of group coaching programs so that women I find will be in a group together and get to learn from each other's experiences. But as of right now, it's one-to-one. So again, if you send me a message on Instagram, we have a little conversation. And if it makes sense, we could have a free little cool dating strategy session just to see if I could help you, or even just give you your next step on your dating. Sometimes I've had people come on just for those calls and then attracted their partner just because they need to know what that next one thing was.
Right. Amazing. I love the work you're doing. I love that you figured out this niche. I love where it came from, being raised by women and wanting to help. Like, there's just so much good about it. And it feels really great to be here with you. I love talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom with us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's so lovely to get to connect and spend time with you too.